This video is for educational purposes only, YouTube.
So, the Donutz Triploid from Humble Seed Co.
Uh-oh.
You've seen maybe the beginning of this, some updates throughout the grow cycle, but this video here, I'm going to be breaking down the entire process from seed to harvest. Now, is this a keeper? Is this something I recommend? And did it do well in the VGrow by Vivosun? Well, we're going to get all these questions answered and more in this episode of CLtv. Stay tuned.
Like we always do about this time.
So if you're new here, my name is Rob and this is CLtv and we talk all things herb. Today in particular, we're going to be doing a seed to harvest video. And traditionally, I don't normally love doing these, but the people wanted it, so I'm going to get it done. Now starting off with this seed, I just went right into soil. Oftentimes I would do a full germination, but I was excited to get these popped and I just really didn't want to wait. Now for this run, I used Build a Soil Craft Blend added into a Pro Mix soil, as well as Stash Blend once a week as an instant tea. Now with the VGrow, you could do things manually with the onboard controller, or you can utilize the app. And with the app, you can set up your strain name, the information about that particular cultivar, and really just get it going pretty hands-free. As you can see, for the most part, everything has got manual controls, but you also can set them to the cycle, which will do everything that you need to per cycle. So now that I'm in the veg state, we're going to get everything set up for that. And really the only thing that you have to do on your end is just strain the plant and water the base. Pretty simple. So it's time to bend her and do a little bit more of that low stress training. Now I'm going to use the provided ties here and bend it just a little bit lower than the other side here, making sure that we can work an even canopy without doing any topping. Now topping normally would result in multiple branches, of course, but this plant's pretty damn thick, and where it's at right now, I feel like it's probably better off if I end up going ahead and just bending it over and doing a little work in that sense. And now let's do a little bit more low stress training. Goku, come on, bro. All right, so now we're gonna use some of this Vivosun plant twist tie. Nice little green on it. Don't want to get too much, maybe like 3 inches, 2 inches here, ballpark. I guess depending on how malleable this is here. So if it's not bending like I want her to, I'm gonna pinch a little. No, I think I can get her. Let's turn it. There, you're gonna bend it down again without breaking it and tie it to the provided opening. This will help the plant grow evenly and get you a nice solid canopy without doing the topping and having that recovery time that you normally would see with topping. Now as you can see here, she's bent pretty well and going to be tied down until she grows up more. Now at about this point, the trellis is going to be incorporated, but I think I'm going to wait just a little bit longer as I'm doing the low stress training. Now as you can see, she's a pretty small plant. I'm not going to let it get too much bigger, but I'm going to definitely have to let it get big enough to yield a little something. This being a highly constricted area, it's not going to be so easy, but we're going to make it work. point now where we're going to be putting this trellis net on. Now this plant's growing pretty well as it is, but as the buds pack on weight, it could potentially end up falling over a little bit or having some bad disbursement of weight. So in this case, it's time to get this net on. Now these grow boxes oftentimes come with these small nets, but this one actually has a little give to it, a little stretch, which is pretty good. And to get these added in, they provided these little clips that go onto the side. Now you'll be able to stick these little hooks here with the magnetic piece and get the trellis going. Kind of working a little makeshift screen and green method, but for the most part, this is definitely just improvised. Oh shit. Now we got our screen here, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna try to bring this down and we're gonna work these through more. We're gonna work the branches through so that way we have a solid trellis as the branches continue to grow. And as you can see from the flowering mark, we're going based on what Vivosun is recommending. And based on how big this thing can potentially get, I've never grown this particular cultivar, so it's definitely time to flip her. We should get at least another 2 more weeks of stretching and increase this about maybe yay high, hopefully just about here. And boom, we're heading into flower. And then as you can see, we're in flowering, so we're good to go.
At least that's what I thought.
Now when you're dealing with limited height, you do need a plant that doesn't stretch like crazy. And we found out partway through this grow, actually after this grow, that Humboldt Seed Co. decided to recommend this only for outdoor grows because of this ridiculous stretch. Now at the time I had no idea, and nobody told me that when we were given the genetics, but hey.
Let me make you a canoe.
Now this plant absolutely blew my mind with the growth. I've seen a plant go 50% to 100% growth, but this was 200 to 300%. It exploded, and being in this VGrow, everything was going good so far, but the plant probably was not ideal for something of this size. The growth in this genetic was incredible, but the bud production was kind of subpar in my opinion. It was pretty stretchy, the leaf to bud ratio was good, but the bud size and internodal space was pretty elongated, we'll say. Now the plant getting as tall as it did, it didn't help that it was getting towards that light. Now later on you will see a little bit of bleaching, nothing crazy, but there was some purpling on the stems that for myself initially I wasn't sure if it was nutrient related or if it was light related, and then over time I was able to see clearly it was definitely light related. When the plant gets too tall like this and you're limited on space, that is a factor you can run into. There also is situations where you get way more bleach tops. In my case I was very lucky and only got one. Now I did flip this when they recommend to do it. But again, growing this Donutz Triploid was not ideal when it comes to a limited space in a grow box. As you can see here, had to toss in another little mini fan just to maintain that humidity. My lawn room was not ideal. Ended up having to get a dehumidifier to maintain, and that's kind of just how it goes. Now this could be related to the fact that you're watering from the base, and it does maintain quite a bit of water in this base. With that being said, the sitting water could potentially increase that humidity. And like I mentioned earlier, I watered throughout the entire grow cycle to the top as well, utilizing some stash blend. So there was a fair amount of moisture in that space over time, but the biggest issue, in my opinion, was my lung room. Just the humidity was ridiculous. Now after a good 60 days of flower, this was about ready to pull here. The trichomes looked ready, everything looked solid, but I needed to pull the plant out to really get a guarantee that it was time for the cut. Now the app walked me through everything, but being that I've been a grower for some years, I like to still keep an eye on the trichomes. And I took a look at them with the jewel scope and the plant overall. And at a certain point when I was looking at the bottoms, I noticed some undesirable traits. And these were intersex traits. Now I was told this plant would be totally sterile and I shouldn't have to worry about that, but it looks like it can still have the nanners. And I didn't really notice many more until I got deeper into trimming. One thing I did notice, like I mentioned earlier, was the bleaching. Now luckily there was only one bud that got it. It wasn't too bad, but it was enough that I wanted to just cut this one off and toss it. Now the VGrow has a built-in drying system, which is pretty nifty, if I do say so myself, especially when you're dealing with a situation of an all-in-one grow box. So I cut it down, I hung it upside down, and then I cut off what I thought were the only pieces that showed some intersex traits. Now after about 10 days this was done drying. It probably could have gone another 4 days potentially, but the buds weren't huge, so it was time to pull it down and let's just see where we were at.
Brother, what's that? What's that, brother?
Now when you're seeing these little banana looking pieces, this is 101 of having hermaphroditic traits. The fact that it's on the bottoms of the plant and not the top really caught me off guard because I thought maybe it could have been potentially light stress. Now I didn't notice any seeds when I first started. I just saw, the bananas, so I was like, it sucks. But as I started trimming more and getting more into it, I started noticing some areas that looked like they could be little seed pockets. Fortunately, I only found one. It wasn't too bad. It was just tiny Hermy seeds, and those were when I was on the road, allegedly. And it wasn't anything that was worth griping about. Now, traditionally, if I have a fair amount of plants, I probably wouldn't go as hard as hand trimming as I did on this, but in this case, it's one plant, so I figured, why not? The total dry weight of this was 3.75 ounces, and it wasn't spectacular. It wasn't the 4 to 8 ounces that you can get in one of these VGrows, primarily because this wasn't the ideal plant to be growing in there, and that's my bad, obviously. Now, it could be this particular phenotype, but 2 out of 3 that I had were very similar, and for triploids, I thought we would see more unique expressions or potentially higher cannabinoids, and I just really didn't see that here. Now, I'd have to say that this plant overall didn't really impress me in terms of the yield, but the look was definitely on point. Very, very pretty. Dense buds, very, very sticky, but unfortunately not very aromatic. The terps on this in the container I thought were just being completely hidden by the box itself, but it turns out that this genetic just really isn't really slapping in the terps department. And I really do think it's this particular phenotype, but out of the 2 that I grew, one being in this grow box and one being in a grow tent, neither of them really had much of a difference in terms of the terpenes.
It is odorless, tasteless, dissolves instantly in liquid.
Now the overall production and bud structure was a little different, but the flavonoids and terpenes from the smoke just really weren't that dramatic. Now I probably wouldn't have grown something with the name Donutz, but again, this was given to me and I was hyped up for these genetics. Ben and Nat from Humboldt Seed Co. really talked them up when we were sitting in that 10x10 grow tent and got us all extremely hyped. Borderline cult-like energy. I was stoked to see the results, and while the growth may be really solid if you're growing them outside, the growth inside for these ones definitely did not do it for me. Now, despite it being in a grow box, I think that didn't make a huge difference because, again, having it in a grow tent, seeing comparable growth in bud structure just really made it unappealing for me. I did clone this plant and sent it out for testing, finally got the answers back, and it turns out it did maintain that trait of the triploid. And that's great if you had a good genetic, but in this case, it wasn't great. And again, it's no offense to the guys who made it. It's just this genetic in particular wasn't it. The garlic butter, fire. Loving that one. But this one, no. Now, if you like seed harvest videos and you want to see me do them more often, I won't be doing them that much. Do me a favor, hit the like button. Lets me know that this is something maybe I should focus more on, I guess. Oftentimes when it's not something new or hype, I'm not too geeked to do a full seed to harvest video, but when it's something like this, it was newer, it had me amped up, and honestly, the passion for growing got me kind of geeking on this. It didn't turn out as I expected, and unfortunately it was a big letdown, but that's just the way it grows sometimes.